The decade is the 2000s. The United States of America is fighting wars in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and basically anything that could benefit the military gets approved and a few $1 billion just gets thrown at it. But as long-term viewers of this channel might have noticed, not every project born of the military-industrial complex plans out. In fact, you could say that most of them don't. Today, we're going to be talking about one of them that didn't. This is the story of Future Combat Systems, the US Army's modernization program that ended up just being an absolutely massive money sponge. The origins of the FCS program began in late 1999 when the Army Chief of Staff Eric Shinseki decided that the US Army needed to transform itself into a more streamlined and efficient organization. One of the primary goals in doing this was to increase the speed at which the Army could deploy soldiers. If the forces were more modular, then different units could quickly be swapped in and out and thrown together in a more haphazard manner while retaining combat ability. It was in this strategy of modernization that the Future Combat Systems program emerged. Now, the FCS program was huge and consisted of many different components, but the gist goes something like this. Over the course of 3 decades, the Army's legacy forces, consisting of heavier armored vehicles like the M1 Abrams and the M2 Bradley, would be steadily equipped with new, small, and lightly armored vehicles. Some of these vehicles would be manned, but others wouldn't, instead being operated remotely or even robotically, that is to say, by some form of AI. All of these vehicles would be connected with each other in a network that was termed a system of systems, whatever that means. In theory, all of these vehicles would be capable of communicating with each other through this network, providing enhanced situational awareness and, well, blah 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 blah, the military speak continues. Basically, the vehicles use other vehicles to see the targets and then they shoot them. Armies can talk about doctrines and stuff all they like, but at the end of the day, it just boils down to you go here and you shoot things. So now that we've explained the overarching goal of the program, let's get into some of the designs that it came up with. It should be noted before we get started that there's not a lot of concrete information on this program because 1, it was classified, and 2, it was cancelled. So yeah, it's rather difficult, but we're doing our best. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, the Wikipedia page for the Manned Ground Vehicles part of the program says, the armor was a unique secret matrix that may be utilized by industry in the Ground Combat Vehicle program. And at this point, we're wondering, what on earth is a unique secret matrix? The Ground Combat Vehicle program, by the way, is the successor program to the FCS after it was cancelled. So you might think to go there looking for information on this unique secret matrix, but then you also find out that that program was also cancelled and classified. The bottom line here is that all of the information that I'm giving you today is relatively incomplete and might also be incorrect in some ways, but it's really the best we can do. As I said, we're trying our best. Further information on these vehicles, or at least what they were intended to be, was taken from a report on the project's Cancellation, as well as a PowerPoint from 2009 talking up the program. You can actually go and read this PowerPoint yourself, by the way. It's cited on that Wikipedia page that we just mentioned, and we recommend you do, because it is truly one of the worst PowerPoint presentations we've ever seen. Basically, just imagine everything your school teacher told you not to do when making a PowerPoint presentation, and boom, it is in there. But, enough dunking on the Army's PowerPoint skills. Let's get into some designs. There were a total of 8 designs in the MGV portion of the program, and we're going to talk about all of them. Starting with the basics, all of these models were designed with a common chassis. This would make streamlining production easier, as well as any maintenance. The idea was that if the vehicles were all very similar to each other, it would be easier to have mechanics from other units helping to fix it. Then we get into the specialized designs with all their fancy names. These just count up in order, so we'll go through them by number. Starting off the list, the XM1201 was to be a reconnaissance vehicle with a suite of sensors, including infrared radar, radio interception, and even a chemical sensor. This was to be the eyes and ears of the whole system, so to speak, finding targets for the other designs to shoot at. Then we have the XM1202, which was probably the most conventional design of the entire program. This was intended to be the successor to the M1 Abrams tank and would be equipped with an auto-loading 120mm main gun, a 50 caliber machine machine gun, and a 40mm automatic grenade launcher. It's worth noting that the Abrams already had all of these things, and then some, but I mean move over, old man Abrams, because it's time for you to retire. The XM-1203 was, as far as we know, the only part of the program to actually get a working prototype. Its official name was the Non-Line-of-Sight Cannon, a 155mm self-propelled howitzer. It used technology from the XM-2001 Crusader, another cancelled project, and it would have been a replacement for the M109, which was first introduced all the way back in the 1960s. The design had a lot of overlap with the XM-1204, a non-line-of-sight mortar, as opposed to a cannon, and functioning in a similar role. Alright, so those were the proposed combat vehicles. So let's wrap up by quickly summarizing the support vehicles. The XM-1205 was by far the dopiest looking of the bunch, which is probably because it was intended to perform field repairs for broken vehicles. The XM-1206 was a standard infantry carrier vehicle and would have carried up to 9 passengers and all of their equipment. The XM-1207/8 was a mobile field hospital, and lastly, the XM-1209 was the command and control vehicle tying the whole thing together. With that, we're finished with the manned ground vehicles, which only leaves us to move on to the robots. These were relatively simple designs. One was a transport that would have been capable of hauling around 1,000 kilograms of equipment. One was designed to neutralize mines, and no, not just by running over them. And the other was a proper combat robot with guns attached to it. The last one was actually pursued for a number of years after the FCS program officially ended, we like to believe, because it was the coolest one, but it was ultimately cancelled, like the rest of the program. The last design we want to tell you about is the XM-1216, a military robot whose primary purpose is to go forward and scout the area while the soldiers sit a safe distance back. And we mention this for two reasons here. First, it may actually still be in use, with the Marine Corps ordering 75 in 2015, and the second, because it has created some amazing photographs, like this one of a soldier operating one with an Xbox 360 controller, and of course that's only if it works, we guess. The FCS program was officially restructured in April of 2009. Certain parts of the program would be spun off and introduced into army units, but the manned ground vehicles were to be scrapped. Shortly after that, the program was cancelled in its entirety, with the final cost coming out to $32 billion over the course of 14 years. Probably for the best, all things considered, but I guess we'll never know for sure if the FCS program could have proven itself in combat. One might even say that it's a unique secret matrix. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.